Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing swell, Bob. How are you this wonderful day?
It is not Tuesday. It is Thursday. Welcome everybody to the Pop Culture Squadcast live on a special night. It's
I,
summertime.
I
Go
should
ahead.
point out I'm still dating my checks on Tuesday,
That's fine. That's fine.
so
That's
it's,
fine.
it's, it's
As long as
still
the invoice
Tuesday.
says Tuesdays, we're good. We have a couple of we have a Thursday show this week. We're gonna throw another Thursday show at you guys next week. So please make sure you follow and subscribe to things so you get to know. We do post a post on popculturesquad.com when we go live, and you can watch it there if you're not directly on that website through our YouTube link. We also have it goes live on all of our socials, so it'll remind you, hey, go check it out. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Facebook, we're there. So we have a guest tonight. That's part of the reason why we have people who want to talk to us, and
Hey, Sherry.
we'll talk about. So Sherry's finished episode 1 of Starfleet Academy, so we'll talk about that later. She might, we might have something next week with that.
Oh, fun.
So we have a show tonight. David Pepose is going to join us. He had reached out to us, which I love when people want to talk to us, and we want to talk to him. David hasn't been on the live SquadCast. He, like I said, I think I mentioned it the other night. He has.
Whoa. Bob is now frozen, which may or may not mean I am frozen or
No,
anybody else is.
You're fixed.
Okay.
It was a quick blip.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is our 150th episode.
Really?
Really.
You've actually counted because you've always been a little vague.
Yeah, no, it's 150.
Wow. So this one is coming out with how many variant covers?
Oh, well, I have a variant face. So there
you go. That's true. That's true. I saw you on a Simpsons commercial.
We're gonna get to a bunch of stuff tonight before we get our guest in. There's a couple of things, but it's like a bunch of announcements. I didn't realize Thursday was such a big announcing day in the comics world.
Just wait till next week.
Well, yeah. Well, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
The reviews are starting to come in for Super.
Yeah.
They're not bad.
So no, they're the ones I've read about a half dozen, are very strong. Right. One was sort of not quite as strong, but still positive.
There are people who are going to see it and they're just going to be, I don't want to watch a superhero movie, or I think that this is something else. Or they're going to, like, I saw the one comment that I saw that was slightly critical was saying that called her a self-destructing hero or self-destructive hero.
Presumptuous.
Well, the thing is, she's not Superman, and you just don't know the character, which is fine. You don't have to know the character. I've seen a bunch of positives. Supergirl comes out next week. I have bought my tickets. We are going to go see it. So that's a big thing. I'm super excited about it. And in honor of Supergirl Week next week, we are going to have the writer and artist of the current Supergirl run on the show on Tuesday. So please be here on Tuesday for Sophie Campbell.
Which, by the way, I enjoy greatly. I can't say that about the movie because I haven't seen the movie, but I'm hoping to enjoy it greatly. And I love Tom King's graphic novel, upon which it is based by him because he wrote the screenplay or co-wrote the screenplay.
He did not write it. He did have a hand in. He's excited for it. This is not his. Like, I think he's got producer credit or something like that, but he did not write it. It was handed to someone else, but he was available to the writer.
I see. Well, that's good. That's good. But he's doing other projects that he's actually writing He's doing
Yes, he's writing and show running the Mr. Miracle
the
Big Barda animated film.
right.
And he was in the
right.
writer's room for the for Lanterns.
Yes.
And he is writing, theoretically, if it ever happens, the live action Archie movie, which is not DC related, but he's writing that script.
Which is interesting given the fact that the Archie
given the current
movie,
state of Archie.
Yeah, the Archie movie isn't owned by Archie. I mean, I guess the movie is owned by Archie, but the comic books aren't as much as they used to be because what is it? Oni is doing it.
Well, there's a licensing agreement with Oni.
Yeah, which scares me because Archie does some brilliant, wonderful, innovative stuff, and then 3 issues later, it's gone.
Right.
This goes back 50, 60 years.
Sure.
Now, okay, fine. It's a business. It's stupid to publish books that lose money unless you really think it'll turn around. But
well, I mean,
three issues ain't a chance.
Right.
1 issue is not a chance.
Anyway, yes, you're 100% right. This is I don't know what's happening with that movie. I don't know what's happening with Archie. Archie seems it's questionable to wherever it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, their fate's up in the air a little bit, but that's
there's a great. I don't know.
Several publishers are going through that.
I don't think we talked about the Archie news.
No. I don't think
on the show, but we do recommend it. You can go check it out on the Beat. There's a great article by Heidi McDonald who summarized somebody else's investigative reporting. So obviously the original poster did a lot of work. Heidi put it in words that make me able to understand it really, really easily and well. And then she called me out and said that she said anybody who cares about Mighty Crusaders is silly. In much more eloquent way, she said it. But yes,
aren't there enough Paul Reinman fans and Jerry Siegel fans out there? Sure. Jerry Siegel wrote the Mighty Crusaders. Then again, over the course of time, everybody's written the Mighty Crusaders.
Right. Well, that's
it's one of those books, one of those issues that Jerry Siegel wrote is one of my favorite comic books.
Listen, I'm not arguing the fact. I am saying.
Oh no, I'm not arguing.
I am saying that she's not 100% wrong in the fact that there is this weird fandom about people wanting the Mighty Crusaders in much the same way that I have the same weird fandom of wanting things like Legion of Superheroes to come back and be good.
Aha.
And we have news today. I mean, we knew that Josh Williamson was going to be writing the Legion of Superheroes. This is something we've known for some time. Yesterday, someone, and I don't think it was Josh, someone who has access to Josh's social media, because I don't think Josh actually uses social media, posted something cryptic, and then today the news was dropped that there's 3 new titles for the DC's Next Level, which are going to come out in September. One being Joshua Williamson's Legion of Superheroes, drawn by Hayden Sherman, which is tremendous. Hayden Sherman is fantastic. It will be interesting. It is definitely Superman involved. It is definitely altering his, what the world that we know, or world that has made up most of the Legion of Superheroes history. So it is what it is.
That world is so far away from where DC has been for the last couple decades.
Yes.
I've said this before, but it was really Crisis on Infinite Earths that haphazardly destroyed the concept of the Legion.
You have said this, and I agree with you to a degree, but I believe that the proper phrasing would be the DC editorial's interpretation of the Crisis on Infinite Earths impact is what caused it to go into a spinning, top.
That's possible.
I feel that they got overly excited about what they had to do, and then with the concepts that they caused their own downfall.
It's possible. Paul was writing it then, wasn't he? Paul Levitz.
He was writing it.
And
he wrote it for. So he wrote it until the dark some situation. Anyway, when Keith took over plotting with the 5-year later gap in '88, that was still, even at that point, they were still dealing with the fact that there was no Superman and Mon-El had to play that role, and then there was Laurel Gand, and they had to do all kinds of weird things that they felt they needed to do. Time Trapper was involved, a lot of that. But I don't know. And I had this concept today. I enjoy the concept of the stories that I loved growing up and reading, and I would love to read them again, and I still read them again. And I hope that people will find characters that they enjoy and read in this new book. I don't know. They may not be the same characters. I know, but
it's not the same. It's not the same time either. It's
No.
2026. I bought Adventure Comics 247 off the racks on the newsstand. That's how goddamn old I am.
I understand.
And it blew my mind. And
Sure.
when they brought it back, that was really one of the first major times that a throwaway, an idea that was never to be revisited again, came back and took over and hit and became huge. And I was totally into it 100% until they kicked the Bizarro World out of Adventure Comics, which pissed me off. And still does to this very day, because we today, as opposed to in 1958, today we live in the Bizarro world.
Yes. So besides the Legion of Superheroes being announced, there's a new Teen Titans, not the new Teen Titans, just Teen Titans. No new. Teen Titans book that's coming out that's going to be written by Kyle Higgins, with art by Danielle Di Nicolo. That is this group of characters. I don't know half of them, which is fine. Red Hood is leading them. One of them, this one over here, I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, the one in the front with the bluish hair is Cheshire Cat, which is
I see.
That's
Okay.
Leanne Harper.
Uh-huh.
Then this Fair Play, and I think this is Superman Boy's boyfriend. I'm not sure. Anyway, whole new story here. Lots of good stuff. Hopefully that turns out good. I mean, Kyle is a good writer. There's a whole story behind that. And then also the third one announced, also coming out the same day, is a new Doom Patrol. New Doom Patrol written by Darcy Van Polgeest, with art by Nico Henderson. I am a big fan of Nico Henderson's art. I think that would be very nice. And Doom Patrol, it is the Doom Patrol is broke, adopting a Heroes for Hire business model to stave off financial and emotional ruin. The team finds itself responding to what seems like a simple case, a missing cat. But when this case proves to be far from simple, the world's strangest heroes find themselves pulled into truly out of this world situation and elsewhere, beyond the view of Robot Man, Elastigirl, and Negative Man, and perhaps even the veil of reality. A ghost of the team's past is preparing to cross into their world. So,
Whoa!
Big noise.
What impresses me about these launches is that all three of these titles for September are properties, are titles that DC constantly revives.
Yes.
And it seems to me that doing 3 of those in a row the same month, bringing them back still another time, is maybe a bit optimistic. It does have this the feeling like, wow, they must be desperate if they're reaching back here time and time and time again.
Well, I think they want I'll play devil's advocate and say that they want those properties to be enjoyed by a newer generation. That's one of the things that they have said, is that even with the Legion, that they want to make it accessible to people who are not necessarily longtime fans. So I hope that works.
Yeah, and that's the only way they can do it now.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Sure. Because we're dying.
Well,
or we're not buying. Or we're not buying. That's another thing.
Well, and even if we are, those kids are going to live longer and they're going to be out there longer, and we need them to read more comics. Right. Somebody told me that line. I forget who. But we need them.
Good for you.
We need them to read more comics, and I just get the feeling that Marvel's going to look at this and say, "Oh crap, we should bring Cull back." But no, probably not.
They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that. I know.
Maybe Champions again, though.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised.
Quick before we bring in our guest, because our guest is here and we want to get to him, but I do want to highlight this news that came out today. There's a new Ignition book coming out in I think it's October. This is going to come out. It's called Dinner Date by Joanne Starr and Kari Randolph, with colors by Emilio Lopez and lettering by Ann World. And I love when Joanne and Kari work together. I absolutely love their Sirens of the City. And this looks great. I am very excited for this, and folks, I'm going to get them on the SquadCast at some point. It's difficult because they're not in this hemisphere. So we're going to figure it out, but I'm excited for this. And, as we were talking earlier, Ignition keeps making good books, and I hope this is another new good one.
Well, as long as they're not in certain countries that are not in this hemisphere, and they're on this planet, we can get them.
We will. So that being said, there's a bunch of news today. We're excited to talk about a lot of it. There will be more news next week. We have more podcasts for you coming next week. But right now, I want to bring in our guest. And I mentioned earlier before he got here that David has been on Pop Culture Squad a couple of times before, but it is his first appearance on the live SquadCast, and he is joining us for our 150th episode. And so that's pretty cool. But I want to bring in right now David Pepose to the SquadCast.
Hi.
Hey, David. How are you?
Hi, David.
So good to be on the show. Thank you guys so much for having me. I just heard you say this is show number 150. So thank you so much for having me for the big anniversary. Sounds like 150th time's the charm.
Sounds good.
I'm so excited to talk all things comics with you. I loved watching that intro. I was like, Bob's being thorough with all of my covers. It sort of felt like, like my life flashing before my eyes a little bit. If this is my last moments on Earth, what better place to spend than here with you guys? Thank you for having me on the show. And
Well, let's make sure it's not the last moments on Earth.
check
At least make it through the interview.
This may be like a whole Jacob's Ladder situation, but you know, listen, talking comics, like what better way to spend it? But yes, excited to talk all things comics today, including my Kickstarter, the OZ, which is currently running live, as well as Space Ghost versus the Herculoids, which just got announced this morning.
Yes, so that's pretty cool. We got that in there too. I do this little intro thing for people. One, to kind of remind them that they've done quite a bit of stuff, and that you should be proud of it. And also, it's good for me for research. But then also, like, as I was doing yours, I'm like, wow, we talked. I think the first time we talked was Spencer and Locke 2 when that was kickstarting, which was 8 years ago now. I think it was 2018 or something like that.
Came out in 2019, so
yeah.
Boy, time's a flat circle. Yeah,
and it's been about you're almost a decade in here, man.
Yeah, I actually sold the first volume of Spencer and Locke. It was right before Christmas of 25. So
really?
I've been 2025 or 2015. Wow.
Yeah.
So I've officially been a professional comics writer for 10 years, which I think makes me like 140 in freelancer years. But it's been an amazing journey. I still kind of pinch myself all the time about sort of the books that I've been lucky enough to be able to work on, and the amazing collaborators I've been so fortunate to partner up with. This is my astronaut job, and I'm grateful every day for all the fans and retailers and press and editors and fellow creators who have championed me every step of the way.
That's awesome.
David?
Mike, David, Mike. I don't think you guys have met.
Well, it's good to meet you.
Well, it's wonderful meeting you. I'm curious as to where you grew up.
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in St. Louis, Cardinals fan. So I live on the West Coast now. But this job is sort of, I think it took me a long time to become a comics writer because I grew up in the Midwest, and so I never met anybody who was a professional creative writer. And so
so many good comics writers, classic comics writers, came out of St. Louis and the St. Louis area. Denny O'Neil in Cape Girardeau, Roy Thomas. It's just a lot of folks, and I like St. Louis. It's a little humid for my taste, but
there's a reason I live in the West Coast. I'm with you there. We got tired of weather, so here I am.
Yeah, it's a great city though, and I understand they hate people from my hometown because 125 years ago, Chicago. 125 years ago, we reversed the flow of the Chicago River and sent all of our shit, and I mean literally shit, the other way down the river to St. Louis.
Well, it makes plenty of sense with that casserole you guys call a pizza. But
we only sell it to tourists.
I was gonna say I don't blame you guys. No, your city's way too cold. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I said, I moved to a place without weather. I live in Los Angeles now, and I'm
right
for it.
Right.
I want to jump into the OZ and let's talk about the Kickstarter. I want to share let's share this trailer with the folks so they can see that, if that's okay. So we're going to do that.
Are you a fan of Mad Max or Lord of the Rings? Then let me introduce you to your new favorite comic, the OZ, now making its triumphant return to Kickstarter. I'm David Pepose, Ringo Award-winning writer of Savage Avengers, Space Ghost, Speed Racer, and Spencer and Locke. And whether you're new to our series or returning as a Yellow Brick Road Warrior, we're so thrilled to show you what we have in store for our double-sized third issue. The OZ is an epic fantasy war story that reimagines the classic mythology of the Wizard of Oz and remixes it through the battle-scarred lens of Mad Max Fury Road, the Old Guard, and the Sheriff of Babylon. Taking place a generation after Dorothy Gale and her friends defeated the Wicked Witch and liberated the land of Oz, the OZ follows Dorothy's granddaughter, a disillusioned Iraq war veteran who shares her name. But when Dorothy is dragged away one night by a runaway tornado, she finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. After decades of brutal civil war following the Wicked Witch's death, Dorothy must navigate the factions left by her grandmother's former friends, the Tin Soldier, the Courageous Lion, and the Scarecrow, in order to survive the horrors of the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ. Thanks to more than 1,500 Kickstarter backers over our last two campaigns, the OZ has been an overwhelming success, even winning the 2021 Ringo Awards for Best Single Issue. And with the fate of the occupied zone hanging in the balance, we're so excited to bring to you our 44-page blockbuster finale. If you've missed our first two campaigns, we'll have print and digital catch-up tiers to get you up to speed, plus other exciting rewards, including 3 limited edition variant covers, exclusive stickers and enamel pins, trade paperbacks, collecting my work at Marvel, Dynamite Entertainment, and Mad Cave Studios, and plenty of other behind-the-scenes materials as well. You may think you know the story of Oz, but this is the story of what comes next. So join us today as we drop you into the trenches of the OZ.
Yeah. Well produced.
Thank you. That was certainly an amateur effort. That was all me and iMovie. But yeah, I think the guy in the trailer really summed it up pretty well for the OZ, in that it's Mad Max meets the Wizard of Oz. It's the story of Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's an Iraq war veteran who's caught up in a tornado and stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. And the story kind of came to mind a little on accident. I was thinking of fantasy titles that I could draw inspiration from after my first book, Spencer and Locke. And my cursor froze when I wrote The Wizard of Oz. It froze right in the middle of the word Oz. And I remember staring at my computer, waiting for it to unfreeze. And I realized Oz could be an acronym for something. And as I sort of started workshopping different combinations, Occupied Zone hit me. And you can see on our Kickstarter page, and you saw it in the intro, that first cover of the OZ, that was basically the exact image that hit me. Dorothy as this soldier giving you a 1,000-yard stare as she sits in the ruins of a magical battlefield, and you see this like hulking juggernaut of a Tin Man right behind her.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
Kind of like reached into my head and really brought that image starkly to life. And it spoke to me in a lot of ways. My first book, Spencer and Locke, the high concept was, what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? And I wanted to sort of address that book in a way that it wasn't shock for shock value's sake, that there was like an actual real story to be told underneath there, because shock, that'll get your foot in the door once, but it's not going to build like emotional investment with your readers to keep them coming back for more. So that story, was about like mental illness and childhood trauma and PTSD and sort of the lengths your mind will go to protect itself from harm. The OZ is similar in that we sort of took kind of an inconsistency in the original text, that Dorothy kills 2 wicked witches, unmasks the Wizard of Oz, and then splits in like the course of a week. That's not a happy ending. That's a power vacuum, not unlike Baghdad. And that really kind of justified sort of the war mashup element. And it allowed me to kind of take stories that I had already heard as a newspaper reporter, interviewing veterans coming home and the challenges they faced reintegrating back into civilian society. And I was able to kind of take all those stories and pour them into the character of Dorothy Gale. So this book's been a long time coming. It's been 5 years since our last campaign. It's not because I, got tapped at Marvel and said, screw this. The book has been written fully since before the first Kickstarter. It was just we've been working kind of steadily since the last Kickstarter to get all the artwork together. Our amazing artist Ruben Rojas, he got married, he had a kid, he was in Spain during the worst of COVID, so the economy was like doing a real number. So he was juggling a day job and raising a kid while Shawshanking his way through our giant-sized finale. But it's done now, and I didn't want to hit start on this Kickstarter until the book was 100% finished and ready to go to the printer. As you can see on our page, we are fully funded. Right now, all we're doing is waiting for a print count at this point. And to sweeten the deal, we are $850 away from our big $20,000 stretch goal, where we're adding 16 more pages to the book. So
all right.
eight more story pages. It'll be 52 pages of story plus 12 pages of pinups. So we've got a lot of stuff for our Yellow Brick Road warriors who are supporting us, on top of all the extra add-ons, including the PDFs of Spencer and Locke #1, Going to the Chapel #1, Roxy Rewind #1. So you're getting 116 pages of story just for the base tier. Yeah, we're it's been a long time for us to get here. It's been a long Yellow Brick Road, but I promise you, it's going to be worth the wait.
I have to tell you that when it comes to high concept, or elevator pitches as they call them now, you had me with Dorothy's granddaughter, Iraq War veteran.
Thank you.
That alone is like, holy shit, what's this guy doing?
Thank you.
When it comes to that, David is a master. That is he always has been. So that's
well, look at Savage Avengers,
sure,
which I did with great enthusiasm, because it shouldn't have worked.
Thank you.
It shouldn't have worked. It came together immediately and was brilliant. And the great thing is, if for some reason you do more OZ stuff, you could put Conan in it.
That was such a fun book. That was my first Marvel book, was doing that second volume of Savage.
And don't forget, there was that night in Baltimore where almost all didn't happen.
Yes, that was, oh boy, that yes, you were there for all of that.
And you and Ben were trying.
It was
crazy night.
There was touch and go for a little while when we found out that we were not going to keep Conan, and there was like a very harrowing week of my life where all the outline that I had spent a month haggling with the cast and finessing it with my amazing editor Tom Brevoort, and then writing the first 2 issues of it, there was a chance that like 2 months worth of work was about to go out the window, and thankfully, thanks to the grace of God, Jason Aaron, and Marvel's lawyers, we were able to at least keep Conan for that first arc, and so it kind of really gave my career a huge shot in the arm, and has kept me gainfully employed ever since.
Well, every once in a while, because I can't turn the editor thing off. Once you have that, you're stuck with it for the rest of your life, and you become a pariah in a movie theater. but once I got to it and read it, I thought, because I thought, okay, this is stupid. Let's see what you can do with this. I immediately went back to the cover and looked for the writer's name, because my memory isn't so good. So I immediately, I said, this is the guy to watch. He pulled this off. And as a launch pad for a career, man, Marvel can help.
Yeah. Yes. It certainly can.
There was plenty of work before you got there. I mean, that was it, working for Marvel, obviously, pays some bills, and you got a chance to work with some great characters, but your ability to come up with stories and script them and put together things, and working with, your ability to work with collaborators, was proven to me before that, way before that. So with the OZ, and where we are with this. So you said it's been a while since we've gone here. Now that you've said, this is finished, right? The book, you have it. You have the complete story that you wanted to tell. How do you feel about that?
The OZ has been such almost an out of body experience in a lot of ways, because like I said, the timeline in this book is unlike anything I've ever done. Like I said, I wrote this thing in 2020. I was finishing the back half of this book. Just for frame of reference, I was writing this concurrently with Scout's Honor. So literally I would write, I would turn in an issue of Scout's Honor and then get to the next issue of OZ. And then I was also writing 10-Ton Titan Terrier at that time. So I was bouncing week to week to week. And that's sort of what kept me sane in the early days of COVID. I was able to channel all that anxiety into the scripts and not, and stay away from the headlines and the existential fears, both of our industry and the country and as a whole. It was interesting. Doing the lettering pass was what was really kind of the eye-opening experience for me. And for those who don't know what a lettering pass is, it's basically, I write a script and then I hand it over to the artist. And then the artist draws the pages based on that. And before we send the script to the letterer to add all the word balloons and the sound effects on it, I'm going to do another pass on that script, basically to see, do the lines hit in the way that they should? Is it too cluttered? Do I need to cut some stuff? Is it reflective of what's going on in the art, or do I need to make little nips and tucks and changes to reflect what add-ons that the artist is put into the mix? And that was really interesting. I worked on that. It was earlier this year. I was doing that lettering pass. I believe it was like at end of January, early February. We had just gotten all the artwork done in the fall by Ruben, and then Whitney Kogar, our amazing colorist, finished off all of her colors around the holidays. And so normally when I finish a book, it's just exhaustion. It's you've run the marathon, you cross the finish line, and now it's time to collapse. But this, I look back and it was like opening a time capsule, of sort of the writer who I was in 2020, right off the heels of Spencer and Locke, this guy who with a head full of theories, but no idea if any of them worked, no idea what his future held for him. And so, it's not like I did a lot of surgery in this lettering pass. There were things where, okay, if I had something with 3 lines, could I say it in 2? Or was there a way that I could sort of add a little bit more zip to a particular line? But it also became this interesting, not challenge, but this sort of interesting thought of how do I still keep it reading consistent from the 2 issues that came before? And, when I finished it, and when our amazing letterer, DC Hopkins, turned in his lettering, I looked at it with kind of this sense of compassion, this sort of, I wrote this as a very different person, a different kind of creator, somebody who was a little bit more raw and scrappy and untested. And I kind of look back at it and I'm like, you did good, kid. Like it really, this book was, I think, honestly, it's the biggest leap of faith in my career since Spencer and Locke. I mean, the OZ is a book that I had originally developed it for a publisher, and we made it to the 1 yard line. And there was another fantasy book by more established creators that kind of at the 1 yard line. And I remember the editor who I developed this for, they did me such a solid. They did not have to do this, and no editor besides maybe Tom Brevoort or Joe Rybant or the Mad Cave crew has been this good to me since. They said, don't give up on it. It's really good. And so the next week I found Ruben Rojas and we started working on this book. And, when COVID hit and we had 2 issues already in the can and all the publishers were contracting, everybody had told me, do Kickstarter. It's a different constituency from the Wednesday Warriors. It's a different constituency from the Kindle crowd or the convention readers. You want to kind of cross-pollinate between these audiences. And I believed in this story. And more importantly, I believed in this creative team. And that's the reason why we had such a long gap between 2 and 3 is I wanted to see it through with Ruben. I felt like I owed that to him as sort of the magic behind this book, but also I wanted the book to remain consistent. We went on Kickstarter and I had no idea if we would find a readership, but it was a calculated risk because I knew the book was good. I knew that the team I worked with was good. And I had a sense of faith that if we took the leap, our readers would come. And they did. They have shown up for us now 3 times running, our Yellow Brick Road Warriors, our Emerald Army. And, this book has really sort of materially changed not just my career, but my life in huge ways. This book helped get me noticed by Marvel. It won us the Ringo Award.
I remember that night.
Bob definitely remembers that because you were sitting right next to me when they told us, and that was an out of body experience. But even, I sitting where I am right now in my life, my wife is 8 months pregnant. She is literally due 3 weeks from today. It's an IVF baby. This baby's been long, hard fought. I would not have been able to afford that if I hadn't done the Kickstarter. Right. So this book has made, a profound difference, not just in my career, but for my family. And so that's why
life.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's, being friends but we're on opposite coasts and we don't see each other very often, but just watching your life change and evolve and succeed is the word that I need to use over the past 8 years is heartening, and I enjoy it. And so Sherry is saying congratulations, and of course congratulations to you guys, and we're excited for that baby. And
tell her I said hi.
She probably just heard that. I got to tell you, your process of reviewing your own work pre-lettering.
Yeah.
Some guys do that in different ways. There's a million different ways you can do that. And it's always correct.
Yeah.
Because ours is such a visual medium that if you wrote full script and you get back these pencils, you have an obligation as a writer, as a communicator to your audience, to make sure that they fit together seamlessly.
Yeah, you're dead on. Well, and it's not even, I hate to say it, like selfishly, I don't look like an idiot. And so my process for lettering, and this is me getting very into the weeds and I won't get into it for too long. Mine's way more involved than it should be or needs to be. I literally, vibe coded a Python script. So literally, it takes my script and I've taught it to sort of get every single line out of my Google Doc and then just put it on Photoshop on each page. So it auto populates. It takes like what would have been like a 4 to 6 hour job and kind of does it in a few minutes. And then I still have to shift everything around, but at least I can see the dialogue on the page and see, does this fit? Does this work? Does the line in context work? I've never heard of another writer doing it the way I do because it's genuinely time consuming. It means that I'm sort of, I'm making the scripting a little shorter because the rewriting, I'm basically taking a day or two to do that. So it all winds up evening out in the end. But I think that's sort of the way to kind of pace myself. And it's always sort of an ever refining process. But like you said, this is a visual medium. And for me, I can only sort of trust my imagination so much without sort of seeing the thing right in front of me. And then I can be as kind of ruthless with my dialogue and tinker with it as much as I can before it goes off to the letterer.
Well, that's the way to do it in my world. I mean, you're also taking some of the work off of the editor's shoulders. I realize that, this is an independent project, so you can do whatever you want. But were it to be for Mad Cave or somebody else, the editor would have to say, "Oh, geez, this doesn't work. Didn't the writer? What's wrong with this?" No. You've covered it, and you do so on behalf of the reader, so that their experience is better because you've already told your story.
Yeah.
So that's that last shiny polish.
Yes,
that you add to it.
100%.
Yeah. So I admire that. I respect that for so many reasons.
Thank you. I like hearing that because, I think that's the thing about being a comics writer is we often do this work in isolation. It's the
Yes.
reason why I like doing so much promotion. It's why I like doing conventions, even though I haven't been able to do them as much as I would like since COVID. It's the reason why I like, I'm very active on social media and I like talking with fans, is because that connection. It's it's hard to come by when I'm spending 12 hours in my office racing a deadline, where my wife is the only one reading the script before it gets sent out. But then when people read it and when people respond, and I know it's hard to do in the year of our Lord 2026, especially with social media and the internet looking like the way it does today. But we writers are can be very isolated and lonely. We'll take any compliments that you want to throw.
You bet. Same is true for the artists.
Yeah.
They're in a room with one light.
Yes. And as you brought up an excellent point. That's the other reason I promote the way I do, is because I used to work in publicity. I was told, you could write the best thing on the planet, and if nobody's heard of it, it doesn't matter. But also, my artists are doing the hard work. This is physical labor for them,
Right.
And they're spending, even somebody like Jonathan Lau, who draws like the damn Terminator, like that's his life. He's in front of that board all the time. And so first off, I don't expect him to do promotion of the book because he's making the book. But as the guy who's not literally like physically putting myself through hell to make it, I feel like that's the least I can do is to promote my collaborators' work and to promote the book itself so it can remain viable, so my collaborators can keep getting work.
Absolutely. The other half of the phrase comics are a visual medium is that comics is also a collaborative medium.
Sure.
Same time, same thing. Now your name is on the book. So
Yes.
when people say, "Oh, this stinks. Who the hell put me through all this and stole my money?" You get the blame, as do your creative partners.
Yes.
Therefore, you owe it to yourself as well to make sure that you're coming off as well as you can.
Yeah.
If you screw up, we all screw up from time to time. Okay, but at least you're taking one of those stops off the board.
That's the goal, at least.
I want to talk a little bit more about what is in the story of the last issue of the OZ.
Absolutely.
So
go ahead.
I mean, you've gotten people there. You're doing this double-sized thing. Part of what makes a good story is the ending. Obviously that's an obvious statement, but like being able to land the ending is takes a lot. You've done that in pretty much everything I've ever seen you write. How do you feel about how you landed this ending?
I feel so good about it. I gotta say, it's one of those things that always helps when you feel confident in the story. You feel confident in the story you've told, and you feel confident in your collaborators. But the OZ, this is I to not toot my own horn too much. I feel like I work really hard to come up with like a big ending and something that like feels satisfying and has like a neat twist to it, something that's memorable and also sort of just ups the stakes and the intensity. I think I do a pretty solid job doing big endings, and the OZ is sort of a really big ending. The story, as we've sort of been exploring it, is now that our new Dorothy is stranded in the occupied zone and has been sort of taken in by the resistance, which is led by the Tin Soldier and the mysterious new Wizard of Oz, who, spoilers, we reveal is actually Toto, who is sort of absconded to the land of Oz, where the magic has sort of allowed Toto to live much longer than normal terrier years and given him the ability to speak. And so, now that they've got kind of this legendary figurehead that's sort of dropped into their midst, the granddaughter of the liberator of Oz, because again, the original Dorothy didn't stick around long enough to be hated. They've been sort of trying to they've been in a foot race essentially against the tyrant of Oz, the Scarecrow, who he's my favorite villain I've ever written. I really think so, because he comes by it so honestly. Grandma Dorothy's former friend, this gentle sack of straw who just wanted a brain, and now he's got that tactical genius, and he's the only one who even sort of had remotely the wherewithal to bring order back to Oz after the Wicked Witch's deaths and the wizard leaving. And he's sort of the dark side of the critic turned pro, in that he had all these theories and then rubber met the road and it all failed. And so it's not like a switch flipped and he became a villain. He's the product of like 1,000 compromises and 1,000 failures and 1,000 horrors. And so he knows just how far he's fallen, but he's out of ideas. And so now he's turned Oz into this marauding war economy. And he's sort of boxed into a corner. He's running out of outgroups to oppress. He's the strong man who needs a new target. And so they've all been trying to find the Silver Slippers because the Scarecrow wants to invade our world next. And so, the way we ended our last issue is Dorothy's mission went sideways. She and her Yellow Brick Road warriors have been captured by the Scarecrow. They're locked in the dungeon, and one of the Silver Slippers has latched itself to Dorothy's foot. And by virtue of the enchantments that Glinda the Good Witch had put on these slippers before she separated them, the Scarecrow can't take the easy way out and kill her. That'll lose all of the enchantment. She has to give it up willingly. And so it becomes this battle of wills. And that's sort of where we open in our third issue, is the Scarecrow is trying to figure out every possible pressure point to get her to break, to give up that slipper so he can invade us next. And meanwhile, Dorothy's trying to hold on. She's trying to figure out what's her opening. Like, she knows she's only going to have one shot to make an escape. So can she hold on long enough to do it? But, it's fun taking these characters and sort of seeing how they've changed, whether it's the Tin Soldier, he's been blown up and rebuilt so many times. That's why he looks the way he does. But also he's seen so many people die in front of him that he's kind of turned his heart off. And so, speaking to your earlier question, Bob, like, we're able to kind of pay that off in a really cool way in this issue, in a number of ways. Or the Prince of Lions, who's the courageous lion's son, who, his father dies in the opening days of the war. And because they don't want to demoralize the entire animal kingdom, his son puts on a mask. And so everybody thinks that's his father, just, scarred under the mask. And meanwhile, he's sitting there freaking out. He's like, what if they find out? How did my father do this? And it's so sad because we knew who the Cowardly Lion was. We saw him at his worst. And, he's grown up, that, he got his courage, and now his son has no idea the growth that his father went through. And so he and Dorothy kind of have this like mutual shared respect of like, he's like, your grandmother knew my father. Like, do you know anything of how he was able to do it? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Which I guess, as I say that out loud, that's probably reflective of who I was as a creator, trying to kind of fake it until I made it. And then, the Scarecrow himself, he's sort of this like festering pit of resentment, as you see in the preview pages, he knows how far he's fallen, but he's also sublimated a bit of the blame to Dorothy and company, that he's like, you left me. You left me to do this all by myself. And now look what's happened. And so, like, he's mad at the resistance. He's mad particularly at the Tin Soldier, who's sort of the only original man left standing. But there's nobody he hates more than himself. And we're going to see that paid off in a really interesting way in this third issue.
I have a promotional suggestion. It may or may not work, but you're from that line of work, so you can decide all on your own.
Please.
For several years, I lived near where Baum lived, when he wrote Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. And when I lived there way back then, it was sort of an open secret. Well, of course, by 10 years ago, people have figured out how to monetize that open secret. They painted the sidewalk in front of his apartment building with yellow bricks.
Yeah.
But before that, there's this huge and beautiful park in that general area that they renamed Oz Park, and there are these drop dead gorgeous statues of all of the characters from the original book. Not all, but the major characters. And you have so many visual opportunities between those two, and there are so many good retailers in Chicago that would help you promote that. And I can name a few if you like, and media people and all of that. I think you should bring Dorothy's grandmother back to her roots.
Okay. Yeah.
Granddaughter, excuse me.
Yeah. No, listen, that's not a bad idea. I mean, I think you just want me to get out to Chicago for your bad weather and your bad pizza. But
I would like that, but I don't live in Chicago to be.
Oh, you're not there anymore. Okay.
No,
all right.
no. DC, when DC hired me back, they gave me pretty much everything I wanted, except okay, now you're going to move to Chicago, right?
Yeah.
No, that didn't work out.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, well, actually, you do bring up a good opportunity for me to give a little pluggity plug to actually our big ultimate reward for this. And I guess I can use this to sort of segue into the things we're offering in this campaign.
Sure.
Which is, sort of our big ultimate tier is we are doing a store signing anywhere in the continental US. It's sort of our ultimate pledge. We've done it with other stores in the past. I Want More Comics in Denver was the a very generous store that did this for our last campaign. But if you are a store owner and you want to do a launch party for the OZ, we've got that as sort of our special final tier. You'll get 20 copies of the book, whichever you want, and also copies of my various trades. I'll just bring in anything you want. So yeah, I'm happy to do all these things. But walking it back just a little bit, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I really want to make this a little bit more overt, which is, Kickstarter is different. It's the readers are a different breed than the Wednesday Warriors. They are a little bit more omnivorous and adventurous with their reading habits. They are willing to go off the beaten path for an artisanal product, just straight from the creators, and they are willing to pay an artisanal price for that. And so ever since my first campaign, I've always sort of thought, knowing that we're going for a slightly higher price point, because we're not printing in bulk in the way that, a direct market subsidized comic would. How do we give our readers the most bang for their buck? And so, we started off with just the page count. This issue is double sized. And like I said, we're about $850 away from our first stretch goal, which is going to add 16 more pages to the book. So this is already bigger than the biggest issue of the OZ. We've also got, like I said, the PDFs for Spencer and Locke issue 1, going to the Chapel issue 1, Roxy Rewind issue 1. So that's another 64 pages of content on top of the 52 pages of story I'm already giving you. But there's also some more stuff we've got. I really wanted to make this campaign streamlined. We talked a lot about how it's been a few years since our last campaign because we wanted to make sure it was consistent and cohesive from start to finish. But that meant that when we hit launch on this thing, I didn't want to wait 1 second longer than we had to. And so we've done a lot of mix and match add-ons. So if you like any of these covers that Bob is scrolling through, you can get them a la carte. You can get them in bundled sets. If you're a collector, you can get all 14 and will actually soon be 15. All 15 covers that we're doing. And beyond that, all of my trades, as you see the Bob scrolling through them, you can mix and match those as well. We've got every single trade I've ever written as individual add-ons, and or you can get them in bundled discount sets. So you can get 5 of my creator-owned trades. You can get 5 of my Marvel trades. You can get 5 of my cartoon trades with Space Ghost and Captain Planet and Speed Racer. And like I said, you can mix and match between all of it. This campaign, having learned from the previous 2 campaigns, my number one goal was I want to make sure that when I send you guys a survey, all I need is your name and shipping address. And so this thing, like I said, you see it's funded already. So this campaign at this point is just I'm getting account for the printer. But like I said, this book is so special to me. It's so important to me that I really want to get as many people on board as we can, because I think between the quality of the creative team, Ruben Rojas and Winnie Kogar and DC Hopkins, and the story that remains resonant years later in ways that I could have never even predicted, I do think the OZ represents some of my best work of my career. And so I want to share it with as many people as I can.
And I point out that your work in the publicity and promotion areas seems to be in your DNA.
That's true.
You know,
and that's, I mean, listen, I enjoy my, there's at least one or two emails from David Pepose every month in my inbox of whatever it is you're doing. You're sharing it. I had a conversation with Joe Rybat once about you, and he loves you. And I told him, you know, I'm like, you know, I get everything that he's writing. He's like, good, you know, he supports he enjoys, as somebody who doesn't have to do your promotion, he enjoys you promoting yourself. So
no, Joe's a sweetheart. He's a guy who is a man of few words.
Yep. Wonderful person.
So I always love when other people tell me that they've spoken with him about me, because you know but he's kind of the perfect editor in that, like, you know, he's not there to mess with the work. You know, he kind of supports the vision. Sometimes he wants to throttle me because I give too many notes for everybody else. But no, Joe's a sweetheart, and I think, you know, the fact that, like, he has sort of kind of built this team, you know, that he was the one who suggested Jonathan Lau, and he's the one who suggested Andrew Dahlhaus, our amazing colorist, and Taylor Esposito, our letter, is a lovely person. Yeah, you know, it's great working with Joe. It's great working with Dynamite, who and our team at Warner Brothers, the licensing team, all of whom have been super supportive of the work. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think I know how many books there are every month, and I know how many good books are out there every month. And so I know that, you know, it's not just what's on the page, although what's on the page is obviously incredibly important. But I think that there's always a million intangibles that are off the page, that many of which you can't control. But I'm going to go to the mat to control the ones that I can. And that means you can't get me to shut up about these books. My parents always used to tell the story that I didn't really talk until I was 4, but once I hit 4, I never stopped. And that certainly speaks to my attitude towards promotion. And it helps that I'm just enthusiastic about my collaborators and their work as well.
Well, that's true. You have something to be proud of. And a publicist does not always have that luxury. And if you don't like it, you're the guy who has to make it better. So...
Yes, absolutely. You know, you'll be hard pressed to find anybody who's more ruthless about my work than me. But you know, I used to be a critic. I mean, Bob knows this. I spent a long time as a reviewer at Newsarama. That was sort of my first job in the industry, beyond my internship at DC in college. And I use those lessons every day. I mean, I look at every element of my books, and I always sort of, and it's sometimes eerie how easy it is to slip back into it. But I look at everything as, if I was reviewing this book, what would I say about it? And I try to kind of anticipate those things in advance with my team. And you know, sometimes my team wants to throttle me over it. But then when they see the book as it comes out, and they see the way that people respond to it, then they usually say, okay, there is some method to the madness.
Yeah, I see that as well. I want to talk about some of the things we haven't talked about since last time you were on Pop Culture Squad.
Sure.
What is what is the difference for you in writing licensed characters versus characters that you've created out of whole cloth?
It's different muscle groups.
Sure. I know there's a difference. I'm just
oh yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah.
What is it? How do you adapt to it?
Well, it's good because I like to kind of differentiate between muscle groups. While I'm because I think like doing something at Marvel is a different kind of sport than doing a licensed book, and not all licenses are not all licensors are created equal.
I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the things that I did want to differentiate. Like there's working for Marvel, where you're working on Marvel's characters, but there's also then working on things like Space Ghost or Captain Planet or Speed Racer, and
and every company is very different. And then there's the creator owned side of things, and the creator owned side of things is difficult, or I shouldn't say difficult. It has its own challenges, because you are sort of coming up with the whole thing whole cloth, but that means that you have to sort of not only generate interest in yourself, you have to generate interest in your collaborators, you have to generate interest in publishers who might buy such a book, because again, it's much easier for them to just say no, like limited budgets, finite resources, you have to give them a reason to do it. Whereas if it's something like, Space Ghost, for example, they obviously want to do that book. They bought the license for it. Whereas Marvel, is sort of, they're less precious necessarily with what the characters do and look like, but you have to do do the horse trading of the characters themselves, particularly villains. I know Savage Avengers was kind of like a fun but challenging experience in that regard, where I knew I wanted to do a team, and I knew that there were certain characters that fit the mandate, and having to kind of figure out like, all the big name characters that like Jerry Duggan did, I can't use them. They're all elsewhere, and also Marvel doesn't repeat that roster. And so it became sort of like, a little bit of horse trading, where it was like, okay, who are the characters that still kind of fit the archetype, but I know nobody's doing anything with Flash Thompson, and nobody's doing anything with Cloak and Dagger, and nobody's, Elektra as Daredevil was like the biggest name character I had besides Conan, who was being written out. So that is sort of like, when you're working at Marvel, you're doing marathons, but at sprint like pace, and you're doing it with weights on your legs, because again, you have to play that game of 20 questions with your editor of, am I using a character that's allowed, that I can use, that somebody else isn't using? And depending on who your editor is, if I'm working with Tom Brevoort, he knows where all the bodies are buried. If it's somebody else, they often have to ask Tom where the bodies are buried. It sort of eats at your time. Licensed work, licensed work, it's very much like, I said it earlier, not all licensors are created equal. I've been very fortunate that the team at Warner Brothers has given us so much latitude. I wrote a very detailed outline for Space Ghost and Captain Planet, but they understood kind of exactly what I was doing from the jump. Particularly, I always want to give her a shout out. Like Megan Logan on the Warner Brothers team has gone to bat for us in a million ways, and has really sort of given us that kind of freedom to tell the story in the best way possible. Tatsunoko over at Speed Racer, they've been another wonderful licensor who has really sort of, they're like, okay, we understand what you're getting at. And
I got to tell you about that. I had a conversation with Chris Bautista. Before, like, he showed me his first sketches before it was even announced.
I saw those first sketches. He and I had a lot of conversations about those.
Yes, well, I'm sure you did, because but when it was announced that you were going to write it, I was like, yeah, that's good. That'll work fine. I know Chris. So, and if anybody who doesn't know Chris Bautista, anything related to Tatsunoko is super precious to him, and he's very protective of it. Like when, like, we had a long conversation, like when they announced Gatchaman, we had a long conversation about it, and he had never met Cullen or never talked to Cullen before, and he was nervous. He's like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. Like but you know, I like Tatsunoko has been wonderful, and Chaz Pangburn who did, you know, the all the editing from issues 1 through 9, and even bits on 10. You know, he was very good at, if there was ever any sort of like kind of cultural stuff that we had to kind of navigate, like he was very good at sort of you know, sort of talking it through with Tatsunoko. I mean, so they've been wonderful licensors to work with. But there are other licensors that are a little more precious with stuff. Like I've certainly worked with some who maybe are a little bit more on the purist side of things,
Sure.
a little bit more conservative with the characters and how they're portrayed, or they have a very specific idea of how they're supposed to be. And so, you know, it is on a spectrum, and I've been very fortunate that the licensors I'm working with currently are great licensors. Like, you know, they're a dream to work with. And, you know, you kind of figure out like the other ones, like if it's a short thing, all right, it's a one-off, and you kind of know, you know, for next time. If it's something that's a little bit longer term, you sort of see it as like, all right, like let's see this as sort of the opportunity to try to kind of like build trust and to build a relationship, because I understand that licensors, they're paid to, you know, be protective of the characters, that there's a certain kind of window that they're willing to sort of tell stories in. And, you know, you pick your battles, essentially. You figure out sort of
Right.
like, what's the important things that's true to the story, and what are the things that you can bend on in a way that doesn't compromise the overall quality of the story. And then you sort of you work with your editors, and then they sort of work with the licensors. And but it's always different, you know. There's a licensor who I'm sort of just starting to get the ball rolling with now, who I've never worked with, and like that's its own learning curve of sort of figuring out what they're willing to do and what I'm willing to do. And so yeah, it's all very, very different. But I will say, particularly since I started on Space Ghost, it's sort of been the best of all worlds, that I'm able to take from kind of the pre-established mythology, you know, particularly Space Ghost with that deep bench of rogues. And at the same time, if I want to use Zorak, I don't have to ask an editor's permission to use Zorak.
Right.
Nobody else is
allowed. And so that's really been kind of the best of all worlds. And it's something that I certainly don't take for granted.
You're very polite. I have had many of the same experiences that you just sort of quoted, dealing with licensed material.
Sure.
And in this case, I'm not talking about DC protecting the properties it owns, just your license from others. But I've also found a number of those licensors also to be complete assholes.
You know, I try to look at it as Midwesternly as possible.
I do too, but you know where I'm from.
He's northern Midwest.
No, I mean, you know, it is the danger of having an extra cook in the kitchen, especially when that cook owns the kitchen. But I say it with no irony and no lie, that the Warner Brothers and Tatsunoko, having worked with other pickier licensors in the past, I don't think I've gotten a note on Space Ghost since like issue 4 of the first volume. Like they've been really like that. We've all been very much in lockstep. And Speed Racer, yeah, like I think Chaz Pangburn, when he was editing the book, he was able to anticipate a lot of stuff, mostly just visual stuff, like involving like costumes, you know, particularly like for Trixie. But those licensors have been really amazing. But yeah, I mean, I think if you do license work enough, and I've been lucky that I've sort of been all over the place. Yeah, of course, there's always going to be sort of like, there's going to be the ones who maybe aren't as experienced with it, and so they're going to be like, I'm going to give a million notes, or they're especially precious about it, or they're especially conservative about it. And you know, some of those have not been super fun assignments. sometimes you have to call in your editor and just be like, can you sort of act as a middleman here since you're the one that's paying for the license? But thankfully, knock on wood, for the last, I guess what, I've been working on SquadCast for 2.5 years now. In the last 2.5 years, I've had a pretty good streak. Hopefully that'll continue.
It's tough. Let me make a suggestion. Should you get heavily involved in the live action adaptation as opposed to animated? First question out of your mouth, very first question is, so do you have the character licenses? Do you have the character likeness licenses? Because if you want to use Charlton Heston in your Planet of the Apes adaptation, you damn well better have somebody from Charlton Heston's estate signed off on that.
That's a good idea. I haven't run into it yet. I think the only live action stuff I've done is Star Wars. But I'm gonna put that one in the back pocket for sure.
There was a lot of ashes created from that particular thing that he mentioned at one point.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the first issue of the Planet of the Apes magazine at Marvel, the black and white, was completely done, completely printed, but not bound. It was at the bindery when they got a call from whoever owns it, 20th Century Fox, that they didn't have the character likeness licenses. So you couldn't use Charlton Heston's visage in this comic book he just printed 200,000 copies of. So when Bob says ashes, he meant that literally.
That's a lot of ashes.
The writer of that was Marv Wolfman. Marv has a copy of that, unbound, of the make-readies of that book. And I figured it's got to be the most valuable comic book around.
That's fun. Yeah, boy. I mean, I feel like if I was doing that, I'd be like, can we just like tweak the face and it'll be starring, Harlton Cheston.
Exactly. Well, you're good like that. I got to tell you another story that we got. So you're here. We're going to give you stories too. So, sure. And it's related to Captain Planet. You know where Captain Planet comes from, right? Do you know the history of Captain Planet?
Ted Turner. Yeah. Okay. That was his brainchild.
No, he wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Okay, go on.
So I was sitting at a convention. I was sitting next to JC Vaughn, and we were talking about his Lost Universes, comic buyer's guide things, and we're talking about different things, and we were talking about PC comics, and we're talking about, we're of a similar age, a little older than you, and talking about Ms. Mystic. And then I said, and we were sitting there talking like, Captain Planet is Ms. Mystic. And we're like, so we were talking, and then we went to dinner with Mike, and as we're there, like, how did Neil not sue Captain Planet? Because Neil is a litigious fellow. And the answer is that because they were a client of continuity, that he helped make Captain Planet and adapted Ms. Mystic.
Yes, he did a lot of those early designs for those characters. Yeah. See those
beautiful poster.
Yeah, Captain Planet was such a fun book to work on because and I may have told Bob this already, but that book I pitched around the comics industry pretty much since the moment that Spencer and Law came out. It was actually a little eerie, a little bit of like synchronicity in the universe, that the day we announced Captain Planet was it was the day after the 10-year anniversary of me messaging George Marston, who I came up with in the Newsarama trenches, my best friend. 10 years, I had said, it'd be neat if somebody did a reboot of Captain Planet. And because I thought, that was a character that, really spoke to not just the environmental themes that we're dealing with today and are going to be dealing with even worse in the future, but really it was sort of the themes of corruption and capitalism that are fueling all this environmental sentiment. And I thought, the characters were international and diverse in such a natural way. It sort of reminded me a lot of Giant Size X-Men, and, Charles is going all around the world recruiting people. And I had just seen Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time. And I was like, oh, that was so interesting with the fight choreography and the way that they really seamlessly put in all the elemental powers. And that was sort of the initial kernel for it. Whereas I was like, what if they had done Captain Planet in a post-Avatar environment? Like, how cool would the Planeteers be if they were essentially elemental benders? And so I pitched that book to every single publisher in the industry for years. There was a former publisher who I won't name names because he's a lovely guy. But I cornered him at a comic shop in Los Angeles. So I'm already narrowing names down. And I said, hey, listen, how would you feel about getting me doing a Captain Planet book for you guys? And he laughed and he said he needed that license like he needed a hole in the head. So it winds up being, the right place, right time, in that it was 2 San Diegos ago, or maybe 3 almost at this point, when Dynamite had announced that they were expanding their Warner Brothers initiative, and they had Captain Planet on their roster. And I remember I got the press release on my phone, and it was BarCon that night, and I marched over. I saw Nick Barucci and I saw Joe Rybant, and I was like, you're giving me this book. You have to give me this book. And so that was a really fun story to get to work on with Amon Casalos, of just like, what would happen if Captain Planet debuted in the year 2025 instead of 1989. And Amon did such a fun job with all the redesigns, including the Captain Planet beard, which was not. I will take credit for like the elemental elements, giving him the rocky shoulders and the flaming hair, but the beard was Amon's idea, and we all saw it in one of the designs, and we're like, well, that's cool. You got to run with that,
right?
But it's still the single funniest bit of criticism I've ever gotten on one of my books. Is there was somebody who was like, well, look at him. He clearly gave Captain Planet a beard to be his self-insert character. And I've never heard my wife laugh in quite that way when I read her that tweet on the couch. I'm still kind of like hurting from that laugh a little bit. But yeah, that book was super fun to work on.
I mean, it's totally you. Of course, I can see
it. Sort of that X-Men meets Avatar, the team was really fun. It was a little bit of shades of Savage Avengers in certain ways. And yeah, I would love to return to that book at some point. It's on hiatus at the moment. It's no one's fault but my own. It's just my bandwidth is so maxed out. And Amon had to take a break after the first arc for some other work he'd been putting off. And so I was like, this is a technically challenging, involved book. The release schedule was not ideal because it came right on the heels of Dynamite switching distributors to Lunar. So the shipping schedule was accelerated. So I would love to return to it someday. It is just, that is a book that you have to plan it like a heist. Essentially, you need to, every character is at every moment. And so it involved book, and something had to give. And this was sort of the thing that kind of the situation presented itself to sort of put it on the table for a little while. So never say never. There are certainly some villains I left on the table for that. I think you can tell a really cool Hoggish Greedley story in the year 26. But it will be contingent on my schedule ever opening up in the near future.
You actually pitched a story, a miniseries or story arc that could be great. And I know you don't have the time to do it now or anything, but the idea that you had mentioned, you sort of skipped over, the idea of reimagining Captain Planet for different time.
Yeah.
For different periods of time. Well, time is infinite. going backwards and forwards. And I think there's a story arc there of seeing that work in those different eras, whichever ones you choose. It doesn't matter which ones. You don't have to go for Revolutionary War and World War II. You do whatever you want.
You should, it's funny. We tapped into that a very tiny bit in our second issue of that. We sort of recontextualized Captain Planet. Sorry, I'm gonna get in the weeds on Captain Planet. I know that's what I had here, but in that we sort of reimagined it in that Gaia, rather than being like a demigoddess, is more of like a Dalai Lama figure, where it's a generational. She's the high priestess of Earth. She's the conduit between humans and sort of the energy that makes life possible. And so Captain Planet is sort of basically the champion of this Dalai Lama figure. And so we actually opened our second issue, and this was a great note from Megan Logan, our one of our licensors at Warner Brothers, where she was like, I want to see a little more of the history of Captain Planet. And so we actually opened with a montage of Captain Planet all through the centuries of different Gaias, seeing him dealing with, seeing him during, the eruption of Pompeii, seeing him dealing with British poachers in colonialist Africa. We even had a scene in issue 3 that's one of the craziest things I've ever written, but I really enjoyed writing it, where we realized that Captain Planet was trying to stop the meteor that killed the dinosaurs and failed. And so I think that's a fun idea, and I will say, it's funny, we just announced this morning Space Ghost versus the Herculoids. And that's something I've wanted to write for a long time, having watched all the original episodes and the Space Stars.
Sure.
But that spun out of a conversation about, could we do Space Ghost and Captain Planet? And I haven't quite cracked that idea yet, because I think the tones are so different. Space Ghost being from such a heightened reality versus the Planeteers being kind of essentially from the world outside your window, one step removed. But I think there is something to be said about exactly what you're saying of, what happens when Captain Planet, does he win? What does it look like in the future? Or does he fail? Does he have to go to another world? What is
right.
The future and all that? And so
I have ideas.
There's a story to be had. We've played so much with time travel in Space Ghost that it was something that, at least for now, I was sort of more inclined to kind of keep on the shelf, because year 2 was so rooted in everything involving time travel. But there's definitely some stories to be told, and I certainly, I'm any comic writer who says they haven't done it, I think is lying. Of course, you kind of size up your characters in your head a little bit, and I feel like there is a little bit of a Batman Superman thing going with Captain Planet and Space Ghost. Cap is very powerful, but he's also a nice guy, and God loves Space Ghost. He's my grouchy little guy. He is oops all fists. And so I think Space Ghost would probably get the edge because he's a lot meaner. And meanwhile, Captain Planet would be like, why are you punching me? But they would be a fun team up, and I think you could do something really interesting, bringing those two worlds together. So maybe someday.
Do you know who would have really loved a Captain Planet Space Ghost team up?
Who?
Neil Adams.
Oh, nice.
Neil would have loved the opportunity of his work being conflated with Alex Toth.
I mean,
and who wouldn't love that?
Honestly, it's an honor to get to even play in that kind of field.
Yeah,
and,
yes, it is.
Because just in the same way that you're like, oh, Neil Adams and would look up to Alex Toth, I get to look up to both of those guys, and
right.
Being kind of the latest part, and especially I feel the same way with Speed Racer and Captain Planet as well, but Space Ghost in particular, it is something that, even though it's a little bit of a cult favorite, it has longevity. You had that Space Ghost in particular. It's the reason I took the book. It is a character who is known for reinventing himself generationally. So you have the 60s run, and then you have the 80s run that's sort of, coming on the heels of all the toyetic shows and Thundercats and all that. And so you've got the team ups with the Herculoids and the Teen Force. And then you've got Coast to Coast, which was sort of my first introduction to Space Ghost for my generation, the sort of, postmodern, ironic MTV generation. And then you have Joe Kelly's miniseries in 2005. It basically a Batman Begins story before the summer before Batman Begins came out. And then Future Quest, which is sort of like, I see that as a response to the MCU that, they're like, okay, we're going to have a big shared universe of all the Hanna-Barbera characters. And, Space Ghost, that comes from humble beginnings. It was a response to Adam West's Batman. And so being able to sort of, in the same way that Batman's reinvented himself a million times since Adam West, stylistically and tonally, we can do that with Space Ghost. And we can sort of, we have all the raw ingredients. We can kind of really reintroduce him and characters like Captain Planet and Speed Racer to a brand new audience who maybe only know the characters through cultural osmosis, but don't have that emotional investment. And
That's right.
If they're willing to sort of roll the dice and pick up the first trade, that's all they need. I'll hook you from there. You don't have to do homework. I from my very first book, the thought has always been beyond sort of the known quantity that will get our foot in the door. How do I keep you there? And it's,
do you know who hated Space Ghost Coast to Coast? Hated Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
They didn't understand it, and by Hanna-Barbera, I mean Hanna-Barbera. They didn't understand it. They didn't have a clue what was going on. They didn't recognize the character outside of visually. It's an odd thing to say. And I totally get that. That's why I love this show.
Yeah.
Because guys like Hanna-Barbera, and I do not put them down at all.
Sure.
But, they're even older than me. Actually, they're no longer with us. And evidently I am. They didn't get it, and they were repulsed by what they've seen. We see that going on right now, and this is for Sherry, with a lot of Star Trek fans.
I think it speaks to a greater point with the audience, which is, you never know who's going to be a purist on things. And I've been really fortunate. I think I've kind of hit that nice sweet spot in that I don't think I'm deviating so much from the source material. Like I watched every episode of Space Ghost and every episode of Speed Racer to kind of get the lay of the land and figure out what are some themes that may have emerged in retrospect that the creators may have not really thought so much about when they were flying by the seat of their pants. But also, there are a lot of people who don't know these characters. And so they're open to sort of doing something a little tonally different, as long as the core heart of it remains the same, as long as the central premise is being honored. But Space Ghost is interesting because, like I said, he has reinvented himself so differently from generation to generation. And, and I've been really fortunate in that the one corner that I could not have possibly expected to get support from, but I've been so grateful to get it, is Andy Merrill, the voice of Brack from Coast to Coast. And that is a guy who he's a sweetheart. He is a mensch in every sense of the word. I feel like I've had a few creative people over the years who have really gone to bat for me when they didn't have to, and that honestly, it did nothing for them. Scott Snyder, Gail Simone, Patton Oswalt, but Andy, because so many people, ironically, they only know Space Ghost as a talk show host. It would have been very easy for him to give us the thumbs down, to say, this is not my Space Ghost. And instead, I think, and it speaks to that, at his core, Andy Merrill's a fan of Space Ghost, and he loves the originals. He was so gracious that even though our take was so divergent from his, and I think because his take was so divergent from what came before, he has championed us every step of the way. And this is a guy who, didn't know me from Adam when we announced the book. And so he's a real sweetheart. I literally just got the final lettering pass for our Space Coast Annual. That's up for pre-orders. It's FOCs on Monday. I just got it, that final proof today. And so when I finish this podcast, that's actually going to be the next thing I do, is I will finally get to tell Andy, here's the whole thing for year 2. Because as somebody who supported us so much, I feel like that is the absolute least I can do.
Sure. About 10 years ago, I did a show with Andy in New Jersey, and many other people. I mean, it was a big show.
Yeah.
But I walked across the aisle and introduced myself and I said, "Listen, I really love your work. You're terrific." And we had a conversation during the downtime during the convention and the setup time. I can't imagine how you get that ukulele out of his hands. I don't think it's possible. I think it would hurt him.
I've never had the honor of meeting Andy face to face. I don't know if we've ever been at the same shows together, and I have done a little bit less shows in recent years as my deadlines have begun to mount. But I would love to do that.
And your family grows.
Yes. Like, I was going to say, I everybody keeps asking me if I'm doing San Diego this year, and I'm like, literally never. No, not this year. I would have a 2-week-old, but I'll be there in spirit. But yeah, I think Andy is just, he's a sweetheart, and I think it just goes to show that, like, this industry, it can feel competitive sometimes. It can feel isolating. And I'm certainly not immune. When I see somebody getting a cool announcement, it doesn't matter how busy I am. I'm like, oh, like what did I do not to get that announcement? I think it's just, being a human being. But you see that there are certain people who have sort of gone through that gauntlet of fire, come out the other side, and still remain so gracious and uplifting of up and comers like me. And so, it's one of those things that while I'm grateful to be gainfully employed, I still don't think I don't consider myself that I've like made it by any stretch of the imagination. I still consider myself very much a journeyman in my career. But I hope that if I ever get to the level of an Andy Merrill or a Scott Snyder or a Gail Simone, who, I being able to sort of uplift some of those creators and use that platform to signal boost. I mean, there's a reason why, if you check out my Kickstarter page, I've backed over 1,000 campaigns. It's sort of, it's the least I can do.
Yes, you have to prime the pump.
Yeah. Well, it's also just, I don't know, maybe it's karma. Maybe it's just, the universe, but I feel like, I've been fortunate to have creators kind of, be gracious along the way. I've had other situations that, are a little bit more of a nightmare. And, you kind of think of, like, the ones who have been nice to you on the way up, and then you see the ones who, have not been so cool. And you just kind of think, like, okay, like, maybe I can avoid that kind of behavior as I come up. But yeah. But anyway, roundabout way of saying Andy Merrill is a match.
Yeah, I love the guy and would happily sit next to him at a convention. The moment you start taking things for granted because you feel that you made it, is the moment after your brain stop pushing that envelope. Don't ever let that happen. Don't ever feel too comfortable.
No, I tried all the stable jobs, and this is sort of the only one I feel like I'm like remotely good at. And so, it's the astronaut job. I get to play with toys and pay my bills with it.
The first day I was working for DC in 1976. I'm meeting everybody and all that cool. And then the door closes my office previously held by Tony Isabella. And it's a nice office, a nice size for New York City, which is small. And the fanboy took over for a minute. I sat back in my chair and that fanboy took over. And that's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. That's why you're there.
Yes, 100%. You just brought me back to my first day of my DC internship. That's, walking into 1700 Broadway and just being like, oh man, I just passed by, I passed by a giant statue of Clark Kent going into the phone booth. It was, or that big mural that I think it was Gil Kane, or unless I'm misremembering it, outside the production offices. I mean, I'm a third generation comics fan. I feel like I come by it honestly. My grandfather used to read me Calvin and Hobbes when I was a kid, and
that's great.
My mother grew up reading Silver Age DC and Silver Age Archie, and they get my mother got me a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 346, and it rewired my brain. And so it's one of those things I always try to kind of remember. And sometimes it's easier than others, when you're paying your bills with it, the stakes often feel a little higher. But I still read my books every Wednesday. I'm still kind of, checking things out, and I still go to the movies on opening day. I probably won't be able to do that anytime soon in the next few weeks. I'll have to catch Spider-Man when it's on streaming. But
you might make Supergirl, maybe.
I mean, but it's one of those things that, like, if I had a time machine and I could go back and tell myself as a 7-year-old what I do for a living, the characters I've written, the creators I've met, the things that I get to do with my life, he'd have a coronary. He would be like giving a Victorian child his first Dorito.
Wow.
Like I feel like
do Victorian children need Doritos?
Listen, you don't. Like if you want to kill a Victorian child quickly, give him a Dorito. I feel like if you told 7-year-old me the life that 40-year-old me is living, and the things that 40-year-old me has done, it would be an eye-opening experience for him for sure. But that's why I do this, is in a lot of ways it's to kind of honor that kid. It's to sort of be like, hey, all that the excitement and the wonder and the exploration of these characters and these themes and the artistry and the medium and the industry. I feel like I'm still learning a million things about this business, and I've been.
And you will be.
I hope to continue to do that. I'm the son of a college professor. I like learning, and I think this industry. That's why it's so stimulating for me intellectually. Every day is a different creative puzzle. I love this job. And books like the OZ, books like Space Ghost and Speed Racer and Captain Planet, my Marvel work, it's every single book is a physical testament to the fun and the exploration and the challenges and overcoming them. And so it's a wonderful legacy. And now that I'm staring down the barrel of fatherhood, it's something that I'm excited to leave for my kids.
Yeah.
Very
it's the one thing, my last comment, and I've been walking all over you, Bob, and I apologize.
That's okay.
But the whole concept of being in comics.
Yeah.
A lovely place to be. 95% of everybody I know in comics, which is several million people, are really good people. But that inner 7-year-old you just talked about, he's the one who's paying the rent. Yep. Don't ever forget that.
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. I have a Captain America shield hanging in my office. I can't possibly forget it. But yeah, it's a dream job. It is a job. It's certainly one that takes a lot of time and energy, but it's I always say it sure beats digging ditches.
Oh yeah.
It's the hardest job I've ever had, but it's the most rewarding and satisfying one.
And it's going to be like that, that Captain America shield you have on your wall. The one that Stephen Colbert has and had on the wall of his last 2 shows for 20 years now, that was Mark Gruenwald's. That was originally Mark Gruenwald's shield.
Mark's birthday. Yeah. Today is actually Mark's birthday.
Yeah.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah.
That guy, his issue of Captain America, where he's fighting the Ice Worm, was part of that first pack of comics I ever got. So, and Steve Orlando brought the Ice Worm back recently in Scarlet Witch. That crazy dude.
That's right.
Mark is right up there in sort of that Mount Rushmore of first creators I ever read.
Yeah, and he deserves it.
So
he really deserves it.
We need to cut this off. I apologize. we are going to run out of time, and it's been amazing. And I've let Mike go, and I'll tell you part of the reason is because I know how excited he is to talk to you, and I'm excited that's the case. And I'm excited that you're here, and we will obviously not wait another 150 episodes before you have you back. But we also do want to remind everybody that the OZ, the finale to the OZ is currently funding on Kickstarter. It's funded. We just need to keep adding to
when does the campaign close?
It ends the morning of Wednesday, July 8th.
Okay.
All right.
Hopefully you'll be father by that point. And
that's a busy week for you.
It's a busy week. Yes, the day before my daughter is scheduled to be born. So that's going to be a bizarre transition in my life, assuming she's not born before the campaign wraps. But that's preparation for parenthood. Things can be unpredictable, but if you see me tweeting from my local hospital delivery room, you'll know what happened. And who knows? Maybe our Emerald Army will get to meet the newest intern before the campaign ends. We'll find out.
Great.
That's great.
All right, David.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me.
We really appreciate it. I admire your enthusiasm, if nothing else, and I admire a lot, actually. So.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening and watching and Bob for having me on. And like I said, the OZ, you can back the campaign right now. It's at tinyurl.com/the OZ comic. And like I said, we've got print and digital catch-up tiers. So if you're new to our series or you're returning as a Yellow Brick Road warrior, we've got you covered. So hope you join us in the trenches for the OZ today.
And there's a link in the comments to wherever you're watching this or listening to it, we will be happy to have you back this campaign. I love this book. I've loved it from the beginning. Anyway, thanks, David, for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Okay. Again, I apologize, Bob. I just ran with this one.
No, it was good.
Okay. Who we got this Tuesday?
Sophie Campbell's going to be here on Tuesday. We're going to talk about Supergirl a lot.
And a week from today, who's
we're going to have Tyler Chin-Tanner and possibly more.
Oh, all right.
Tyler Chin-Tanner is going to be on. He is a Wave Blue World. He is helping to edit a book called Civil Disobedience. It is an anthology that is currently kickstarting, currently funding. There's a phenomenal cast of creators involved in that. He's going to see if he can get some and or any of them. If not, we'll just talk to Tyler about how awesome it is and how he can get you to contribute. So there's that. We did talk about that. What happened? We'll discuss it later. Anyway, everybody, we will be back on Tuesday, so it's only a short break between now and then. and we'll be back Thursday. So everybody, go enjoy your weekend. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. For those people who have off, enjoy your long weekend, and we will see you later. And don't forget to read more comics; they're good for you.
Thanks for coming, folks. We love you.
This has been a production on the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?